It's undeniable that both love and money are important. But what about using love for the sake of money? Is there really any love in that to begin with? While it's said that love comes in many forms, surely there must be noble and base kinds of love. My name is Kate. When I was 21, my father passed away suddenly due to illness. My mother had died 10 years earlier, and as an only child, I found myself in a state of solitude. No relatives, no close friends, and certainly no lover. I felt as if I had been abandoned, alone in the world, plunged into darkness. Unable to express my emotions, I was always gloomy, which worried my boss at the time. He took me to a New Year's celebration hosted by the local Chamber of Commerce. This New Year's party wasn't a stiff formal affair, but rather a genuine opportunity for chamber members to deepen friendships over good food and drinks. The food, known for its deliciousness, and the entertaining activities like bingo made it a wonderful party. It was held a bit late in January, but the cuisine was as delicious as rumored. When my father was alive, we used to prepare pizza, sandwiches, and champagne. But this year, being alone, I had no heart to prepare anything. Maybe this is my New Year's celebration, I thought, unknowingly smiling as I was filled with the joy of delicious food. When you eat something delicious, it naturally brings a smile to your face. That's a beautiful smile you have, a man suddenly said. I turned around to see a smiling man standing there. Indeed, good food brings smiles, but I felt embarrassed, thinking he saw me as a glutton. Noticing my stiff expression, the man said, "I'm sorry for speaking out of turn. I just thought you had a wonderful smile." I wasn't used to talking to men, but for some reason, I felt at ease with him and genuinely myself. I'm being frank, I laughed to myself, borrowing his expression. That's because frankly was his catchphrase. Our relationship began naturally. Later, I learned that my boss, who had taken me to the celebration, had intended to introduce him to me from the start. He was a prominent figure in the planning department of a business partner, skilled and well-respected, and my boss thought he'd be a good match for me. The boss, a close friend of my father, had been concerned about me since my father's death and wanted to cheer me up. As the boss had hoped, or rather, as we started dating, we got married 2 years later. "I'm overjoyed to see the couple I envisioned forming a new family," the boss said in his speech at our wedding. Having lost my family, I was now about to create a new one and find happiness. The world transformed for me, not into one of loneliness, but one that warmly embraced me. My husband left his job soon after our marriage to start his own company. A skilled planner, he began developing businesses using his extensive land holdings. His planning skills and beloved personality attracted many collaborators, leading to a successful business. He built rest areas, attracted companies, and developed residential areas, contributing to the town's population growth. Life, like a roller coaster, had its challenges, but he overcame them with his action-oriented nature. I joined his company and played a key role during difficult times, using my qualification as a certified public tax accountant to strengthen the company's financial and tax foundation. Busy with our lives, we were blessed with a new family member. Tears of joy flowed when I gave birth to our first son, Jim. The happiness of having a new family member was beyond words. Jim grew up healthily, and while being a first-time mother had its challenges, looking back, every moment is dear to me. My husband's business thrived, and 6 years later, our family was blessed with another member, John. His birth added a new chapter to our family. Now a family of 4, our days were hectic, but filled with warm light. This became our new normal, and I couldn't be happier. Jim, now 10, grew into a kind, caring brother. and John, his younger brother, was a tender-hearted child who adored him. At that time, our family was about to welcome a new member. It wasn't that I was pregnant again, but we were going to take care of my husband's nephew, the son of his brother. After giving birth, my brother-in-law's wife had been in and out of the hospital with health issues and sadly passed away. Left alone, my brother-in-law struggled with parenting and was then faced with an overseas transfer for work. Feeling overwhelmed by the thought of raising a child alone in a foreign land, he accepted my husband's offer to take care of his son. After much deliberation about the 5-year duration, including concerns about childcare and schooling, my brother-in-law decided to rely on us. And so we welcomed a new family member, a boy named Mark. At first, Mark was reserved and kept to himself, being thrown into a new home, even if it was with relatives. But gradually he opened up and became comfortable with us, thanks to our sons, Jim and John. Jim was thrilled to have another brother and was welcoming from the start, while John, the same age as Mark, gently guided and supported him, saying it was like having a twin brother. Since they were cousins and looked strikingly similar, no one would doubt if they were called twins. The 3 of them grew up like real brothers. My husband and I raised them without any distinction or discrimination, treating them all as our children. Initially, the overseas assignment was supposed to be for 5 years, but due to my brother-in-law's essential work and the lack of a replacement, it turned into a 10-year posting. By the time he returned, Mark, now a middle schooler, left our home to be with his father. John and Mark were very upset. "Even if we're apart, we're brothers. This bond will never break." But Jim consoled them, saying, "I was proud to see my college-age son become such a fine man, a caring brother." Mark went back to live with his father, but we continued to maintain a deep connection with him. Jim graduated from college and joined my husband's company. A bright young man, he demonstrated his father's creative thinking and my keen intelligence, quickly becoming a key player in the company. As parents, we thought it might be time for Jim to consider marriage. But before we could entertain the thought, a grave situation arose. That year, a health checkup revealed a malignant tumor in my husband. He had been losing weight and feeling tired lately, but we never imagined such a diagnosis. He was admitted for treatment immediately, but the disease was aggressive, and the treatment showed no effect. Instead, his condition rapidly worsened. He became frail, bedridden due to the side effects of the medication, and spent most of his days asleep. I spent most of my days in the hospital room, feeling helpless and overwhelmed with worry and anxiety. Our sons and Mark frequently visited, but despite our prayers for recovery, my husband passed away one spring afternoon. Losing a family member was a shock I hadn't felt since my father's death. I was stunned, recalling the fear of being alone again. But Jim, John, and Mark were there to shake me out of it. I had my sons. I realized I wasn't alone. I was immeasurably grateful to them, though I found it hard to express in words. Recently, 3 years after my husband's passing, we held a memorial event to remember him. It's strange how time flies. With my husband gone, Jim took over the company. His capabilities were well known, and any doubts due to his young age were silenced, as I became the chairperson to support the new president. As the new president, Jim quickly started showing impressive results. He succeeded in expanding the company, including attracting a large shopping center, developing related facilities, obtaining construction business permits, and making the construction department an independent entity. The most gratifying thing at the memorial event was being able to report Jim's achievements to my husband. There was another update. John got a job at a major trading company after graduating from college and was assigned to the Indonesian branch, a significant step in his career. He was enthusiastic about this opportunity. He would be leaving for Indonesia alone after the event. After this memorial event, he will be assigned to his post alone. Mark also joined us, and we had a lively chat as a family of 4 for the first time in a while. It's been 3 years. Maybe it's time for Jim to find someone and get married. I'm heading to Indonesia, so give Mom some peace of mind. The younger brothers teased, and Jim just smiled awkwardly, though I wondered if he had someone special in his life yet. We were discussing Jim's marriage when my husband fell ill, and since then, such conversations have been sidelined. But Jim is getting older, and I thought it was time to seriously consider it. However, he wasn't keen on being introduced to anyone, and there were no talks of women in his life. Years passed with me wondering what to do, when suddenly Jim announced, I want to get married. His unexpected revelation surprised me. What shocked me more was the woman was pregnant with Jim's child. It'll be a shotgun wedding, but that's not uncommon these days. I want to take responsibility and protect her, he said. Indeed, the term shotgun wedding no longer carries a negative connotation, and I had no intention of making a fuss. However, I couldn't help but feel uneasy, as they had met in a nightclub where she worked. I'm not one to discriminate based on occupation, but as a mother, it's natural to have concerns, isn't it? Jim's a talented businessman with great leadership skills, but he lacks experience with women, and I worried he might have gotten involved with the wrong person. Yet I knew nothing about her, and reminded myself not to judge prematurely. The day of the family meeting arrived. Emma, the woman, didn't exactly give the impression of being demure. Her hair dyed pink, heavy makeup, and the strong scent of her perfume were off-putting. Her first words were, I've struck gold. Marrying into a wealthy family? He's a big deal, owning lots of land and running a well-known company. I've been bragging about it to everyone. She didn't even bother with proper greetings. I'll be working at Jim's company after we marry. I'll do my best as the president's wife, so please take care of me, she said. I expressed concern about her pregnancy, to which she replied, Working till the last minute is normal. Kate, your way of thinking is old-fashioned. I plan to work after giving birth, too. She assured me her mother would take care of the baby, saying, Kate, you're the chairwoman, right? You must be busy. My mother, on the other hand, has plenty of time to spare, so looking after a child is no big deal for her. Or maybe you'd like to retire and take over babysitting? Her surprising remarks continued. Jim wants to use the estate on the family property as our new home, but make sure it's fully renovated. A president and his wife can't live in an outdated house, and we'll need to hire a housekeeper too. I can't be expected to do housework. That day, I felt very uneasy. When I asked Jim about her, he defended her. She was nervous meeting you, and said some things she shouldn't have. She might be emotionally unstable with the baby due in 6 months. That's what he said to protect her. Mark attended the wedding, and John, overseas, sent a video letter to congratulate his brother. Many local dignitaries and company associates were present. Emma boasted about joining the ranks of the elite, drawing awkward glances from others, but she seemed pleased throughout. True to her word, she joined the company after the marriage, but within a month, I heard of her poor reputation. Frequent tardiness and unauthorized absences were common, and she had no interest in learning her job. A little criticism led to threats of firing or demotion. A veteran employee relayed this to me, hesitant to tell Jim directly. Living in the estate, her details were scarce, but she often stayed out late and left the house early on weekends. Evidently, she wasn't taking care of Jim, who seemed to be living like a bachelor. I wondered where she wandered during her pregnancy. When I asked Jim, he just looked troubled and evasive. During this time, Emma gave birth to a boy. "It's finally over. I've done my part. Women always get the short end of the stick. Now the fun begins," she said. How could she say such a thing? Jim was happy to see his child, but confessed, "I don't feel as moved as I thought I would. Am I strange? What was Dad like when I was born?" He looked tired. After the birth, Emma's unrestrained behavior intensified. She resumed drinking, now frequenting bars nightly. Her heavy makeup and strong perfume returned, far from the image of a respectable wife. She pursued her desires, ignoring her husband, acting childishly. Jim occasionally asked for help, but mostly managed on his own. Emma's mother cared for the child during the day, but often had to keep him overnight due to Emma's late nights. When I made dinner for a tired Jim, he confided, "I just can't seem to feel love for my son. I don't even understand why. I feel like a failure as a father. To be unable to love my own child?" Jim, looking utterly exhausted, muttered these words. Emma's carefree behavior at work and her nightlife continued, and just as I was reaching my limit of patience, Jim collapsed at work and was rushed to the hospital. He was diagnosed with overwork and underwent thorough examinations. The results brought back a nightmare I experienced decades ago. Jim was found to have a malignant tumor, the same kind as my late husband. I was struck by despair. I could foresee Jim's fate mirroring that of my husband. The thought of enduring that same agony again sent shivers through my body. But this time has to be different from before. Jim isn't like my husband. Despite my hopes, Jim's condition followed the same path as my husband's. As the weather turned colder, signaling the approach of winter, Jim passed away one afternoon. Our first family member, born of my union with my husband, was called to heaven. I was too exhausted to move, my mind wandering aimlessly. With the help of those around me, funeral arrangements were made, but Emma was noticeably absent. Emma, his wife, did not fulfill her role and was nowhere to be found. She hardly visited Jim in the hospital, never cared for him, leaving me to wonder what she was thinking. Jim's funeral was conducted solemnly. Emma did attend that day, but she had returned home only that morning. After the funeral, Jim went to heaven. At the memorial, many people reminisced about Jim. Emma, having been drinking wine in a corner, staggered over to me and said, "Kate, I inherit the land and $500K as Jim's wife. I'll make good use of my husband's wealth." Her mocking words silenced everyone around us, freezing the atmosphere. Then, a man's laughter broke the silence. "Thinking you're rich now? That's a big misunderstanding." Angered, Emma turned to retort, but the man continued. "I'm Jim's lawyer, and you won't receive a cent of his estate. I'll make sure Jim's suffering is not in vain." The lawyer was Mark. "About the land, it's actually Mom's asset, right?" All the land was originally mine, not my husband's. He had married into the family, and the land, passed down through my lineage, was utilized by him. After my husband's death, the ownership remained with me. Emma was shocked hearing this for the first time. When my husband died, there was talk of dividing his assets, but the land was not part of it. The assets were mainly related to the company, and my sons had renounced their inheritance rights. They believed the assets built with their father should be passed on to me. "But Jim's assets? I should inherit them, right? They're supposed to be $500K, I know it." Emma raised her voice, sobered up.
Jim's left nothing for you in his will, so you won't receive a cent of Jim's assets,
Mark stated. Jim had quietly harbored anger towards Emma, who had never acted like a wife. His decision not to leave her anything was understandable. The full story would be revealed in the next discussion.
So what if I can't inherit? My son has the right to his inheritance.
Emma desperately clung to the idea of her son's possible inheritance.
When normally, yes, but are you sure the child is actually Jim's? Why don't you ask yourself that?
Jim was troubled, unable to find love for his child. He couldn't see any resemblance in the newborn, which led him to doubt the paternity. Determined, Jim had a DNA test done, which 100% denied any blood relation with the child. Simultaneously, Jim, harboring suspicions about his wife's behavior, had hired a private investigator to look into Emma. The investigation revealed that Emma had been continuing a relationship with a man she was involved with before their marriage. Apparently, the child was likely his. She seduced Jim, a wealthy landowner's son and company president, and then insisted on marriage, claiming the child was his.
Jim has filed for denial of paternity, which has been accepted, so the child is no longer recognized as his legitimate offspring, and is excluded from inheritance. Your actions and neglect as a wife sufficiently meet the criteria for Jim not to leave you any inheritance,
Mark explained. Emma bit her lip in frustration as the revelations unfolded. What's this, Emma? I was taking care of the child because you said you'd make it worth my while, and now this? Then a woman's voice interjected. It was Emma's mother, who, it turned out, was also after money.
We're proceeding with the formalities to cut ties with you and Emma. We need to sever connections with gold diggers,
Mark added, addressing them both. Whether out of anger or despair, the two trembled as Mark continued.
And Emma will be suing you for your illegal actions at the company.
After Emma started working at the company, there were unaccounted expenses. As a certified public accountant, I, along with trustworthy staff, had scrutinized the accounts and found numerous suspicious withdrawals. Investigations revealed Emma's involvement in each case. We were ready to file a lawsuit with all the evidence.
Additionally, you won't get away with the business interference and vandalism at the restaurant the company often uses,
Mark said. Emily had vandalized and tampered with the restaurant's property because they refused her entry without a reservation. She even recorded her acts and posted them on social media. Naturally, the footage was spread and became a big issue in the community. The restaurant owner had filed a police report, and the footage easily identified Emma.
The police are already involved for embezzlement and business interference. You could be arrested at any moment now,
Mark concluded. Emma broke down in tears at these final words. She was later arrested and awaited trial. Our ties with Emma were completely severed, leaving me with a sense of relief. Though the child wasn't biologically related, I felt a pang for what I once thought was my grandchild. But there was nothing more I could do. This time, with Mark's help, we avoided the worst.
It's only natural to act for the family.
To which John, who had returned from Jim's funeral, added,
That's right. We've always been a family, and we always will be.
John had grown into a robust, admirable man. Beside him was a beautiful woman he met on his assignment and promised to marry. They had come to introduce her to me because of my brother's news. She met John as a business partner and decided to become his life partner.
I've been successful in my assignment abroad and fulfilled my obligations to the company. Once my term ends, I want to return home with her and join my brother's company.
John wanted to protect the company built by his father and brother. His return home for marriage was a joy for me.